June 2002. Still working at frame art, living in Northridgeville. Nothing changed. Nothing matters except the books. A lot of books. A lot of different kinds of books. Let's get to it. Book number one for June of 2002, Confessions of a Cineplex Heckler by Joe Keenan. This is a nonfiction book. It reprints 25 essays by Joe Keenan, all about Hollywood and movies and things. It's comedic most of the time. Sometimes it gets a little serious. He talks about Spike Lee and his image and what he's saying in his movies and things, but then Spike Lee was working with Nike, who has sweatshops making their shoes. But then he has essays about wigs in movies and like the most distracting wigs in movies and things. So just all sorts of very diverse essays about Hollywood and how it works, specific movies, things in those movies. Interesting stuff if you're a cinephile like I am. Next up, we have Lamb by Christopher Moore. The full title, I guess, would be Lamb, the Gospel According to Biff, Christ's Childhood Friend. This is the book that brought me back to reading Christopher Moore. Absolutely hilarious, and it is what that full title says it is. It's the story of Christ told by his friend Biff, and it covers basically everything that's not covered in the Bible. Christ's childhood, but the biggest part is the 3 years, I believe it is. 3 years that's not covered at all. There's a 30 years. Now I can't remember. But anyway, it covers this big chunk of Jesus's life that's, again, not covered in the Gospels. And he even runs into the demon from the book Practical Demon Keeping, Christopher Moore's book. I just remember laughing my ass off while I was reading this. And the one scene that I'll always remember is when Biff and Jesus are kids, and they're just sitting there in their town, and Jesus there's like a lizard tail hanging out of Jesus's mouth, and he pulls a live lizard out of his mouth, and he puts it on the ground, and he takes a rock and he smashes it and kills it, and he picks it up, puts it back in his mouth, and then he pulls it out and it's alive again. Fantastic book. Lamb, the Gospel According to Biff, Christ's Childhood Friend by Christopher Moore. Followed that up with Angel, the Case Files, Volume 1 by Nancy Holder, Jeff Marriott, and Mary Elizabeth Hart. This is the episode guide for the first 2 seasons of Angel. So all sorts of sort of behind the scenes things. It covers each episode and gives you like the best quotes from each episode, behind the scenes stuff from each episode, synopsis of each episode, all that stuff. So if you're a fan of Angel, as I am, and I love this behind the scenes stuff, interesting book. Really enjoyed it. All right, then we have 2 books I could find absolutely no information on. I only dig so deep. But we have The Horizon War, Volume 2, The Ascension Warrior by Robert Weinberg. Those who watched last week's video know that the last book that I read in May of 2002 was Horizon War, Volume 1. This is from White Wolf Publishing. It's in their World of Darkness, the mage stuff, so it's people with magic powers living in the World of Darkness. As I said, I could find no information about this story. I followed that up with The Horizon War, Volume 3, War in Heaven by Robert Weinberg. Again, no information. It's mages trying to fight off whoever their bad guys are. My apologies for lack of information on these 2 books. Then I read God and the Gun by Martin Dillon, or if you want the full title, God and the Gun, The Church and Irish Terrorism. This is a nonfiction book about the Troubles in Ireland and how the church is involved. It's Protestant versus Catholic. Martin Dillon interviewed people from the church, people who were on the front lines, terrorists essentially in some cases. And according to the synopsis I looked over before going into this, it said the terrorists were more forthcoming than the people from the church that he interviewed. Um, Fascinating book. I believe this is the book. The one thing I specifically remember was one of the guys talking about. I can't remember if it was a priest that was talking about it. I think it was a priest who was essentially kidnapped by some terrorists, taken to a place, and told to give last rites to a guy they were about to murder. Craziness, but really fascinating stuff. God and the Gun, The Church and Irish Terrorism, Martin Dillon. Really, really interesting. Followed that up with Iron Tiger by Jack Higgins. This is a Jack Drummond book. I believe he was an ex-British pilot and who now just does anything for money. That kind of, pilot. And he wants to retire, but he ends up in Balpur in the Himalayan mountains, and his plane is destroyed. So he's kind of stuck there till he takes a job transporting this sick child across the Indian border. And so he's got, I believe it's a nurse and a priest with him, but people are trying to stop him. So it's man versus man versus nature. A typical Jack Higgins action adventure thriller. Excuse me. After that, I read Champions of the Scarred Lands, edited by Stuart Wyke, or Week, however you say his name, Wiek. This is from White Wolf Publishing, but it's not a World of Darkness book. This is in their Swords and Sorcery line. It's an anthology of short stories. It takes place in this world called Skarn, the Scarred Lands. It was a world run by Titans, but then these young gods came and beat up all the Titans, but it sort of destroyed the land. And this is just a bunch of stories in the sword and sorcery vein of different heroes and characters and their adventures in the Scarred Lands. Don't really remember too much about it. Didn't make a huge impression. After that was The Trench by Steve Alton. This is the sequel to Meg. I believe the book is just called Meg and the movie is The Meg, or vice versa, but I think the book is just Meg. Anyway, I forgot to take down the guy's name. The character played by Jason Statham, he's back. But at the end of the first book, the Meg had a kid. There's a baby megalodon, Angel, that's been captured. In this book, Angel gets away, breaks free, eating people up and down the coast. Meanwhile, in the Marianas Trench, Jason Statham's character's ex-wife is down there. I think she's still an ex-wife down there, and they introduce the Kronosaurus, which is a giant alligator or crocodile-headed dinosaur. It has a bunch of babies. That's what the Megs have been eating down there. So the Jason Statham character has to deal with the escaped Meg, Angel, and save his wife, save everybody, and he's dealing with the Kronosauruses. Just great, crazy, giant monster action. I enjoyed it. After that, The First Mountain Man, Preacher by William W. Johnstone. And this is part of a long series, The First Mountain Man. And in this, Preacher is escorting a wagon train through the Oregon Trail, dealing with outlaws and Indians, is what it says in the description. Just your typical William Johnstone Western, lots of action, not the best writing. Um, and the beginning of a long, long series that I did not read all of. I may have read one or two more. Followed that up with Keeper by Greg Rucka. I do have this book. It's right over there, but it's under like 20 other books, under all my other Greg Ruckas and a bunch of Stephen King paperbacks. So I didn't feel like digging it out. But this is the first Atticus Kodiak book. Atticus, I've talked about it before. Atticus Kodiak is a security professional, a bodyguard. He's taking his girlfriend to get an abortion, and the doctor at the abortion clinic, this woman who has a mentally challenged daughter, hires Atticus as her bodyguard because there's crazy protesters, including those who can get violent. Stuff happens that I'm not going to mention, but it's a fantastic book. I absolutely love it. Love the character of Atticus Kodiak and all the other characters that work for him. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5, maybe more in the Atticus Kodiak series, and definitely a huge crazy character arc for the character of Atticus Kodiak. But Keeper by Greg Rucka, a fantastic book. Then we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Tempted Champions by Yvonne Navarro. And this is, of course, Buffy the Vampire Slayer media tie-in book. The subplot has Anya, who, if there's anybody who doesn't know, Anya was a vengeance demon who was made human after some stuff went down during the show. And so she's a human teenager now. She's part of the Scooby Gang, but every once in a while she wants to go back to being a vengeance demon because it was much easier than being human. And so the guy that recruited her as a vengeance demon in the first place hundreds of years ago, De Hoffren, is making her another offer. So she's a tempted champion. But the main story deals with a vampire named Selena, who is a former vampire slayer. So a vampire slayer that was made into a vampire, who has come to town, and Buffy and everybody has to deal with her. Yvonne Navarro, great writer, and I think an interesting story. Some more nonfiction. Schrodinger's Kittens and the Search for Reality by John Gribben. This is his follow-up to In Search of Schrodinger's Cat, which was the first book that I ever read by him. And basically this is it's a book about quantum mechanics, all of the questions, the few answers we might have, that we think we have. Excuse me. And it's written in such a way that it's accessible to the layman. It doesn't get heavy. There are formulas and things and, mathematics and stuff, but it's not heavy into that. It really lays out what these questions are, what experiments are being done, all sorts of great stuff. I'm very fascinated by quantum mechanics. And I really liked In Search of Schrodinger's Cat, and I really liked Schrodinger's Kittens and the Search for Reality. John Gribben. Great book if you're interested in that sort of thing. After that, we have A Game of Spies by John Altman, and this is set during World War II. Our main character is Eva Bernhardt. When she was 20, she was seduced by William Hobbs, a British spy. He seduces her, gets her into MI6, and then basically just leaves her in the caring hands of MI6. So now she's in France, I believe. She's over there somewhere, being a spy against the Nazis, and she has this intel that she wants to get to Britain. But the Germans know she's a spy, and they're feeding her bad intel. And so Hobbs now has to try and extract her, but she doesn't trust him. So it's just World War II spy shenanigans. If you're into that sort of thing, you might enjoy this book. The penultimate book for June of 2002. The Salmon of Doubt by Douglas Adams. I have this marked as fiction and nonfiction, which is what it is. After he passed away, Um, these are a bunch of essays and short stories that were published. It says in the description that they scrubbed his computers. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, if they found all these on his computers or what, but it's a collection of these essays and short stories. You've got a Dirk Gently story, a Zaphod Beeblebrock story, and then just essays about anything Douglas Adams wanted to talk about. Some are autobiographical. I think some are just essays on different topics. If you're a Douglas Adams fan, it's a must read, and I am a Douglas Adams fan. And then the last book that I read in June of 2002 is The Millionaires by Brad Meltzer. I've mentioned him before. Writes political thrillers, law thrillers, things like that. I like him more than John Grisham. And in this book, we have Charlie and Oliver Caruso. Excuse me. They work for a bank that's so exclusive. You need, I think it was $2 million just to open an account. Things go poorly for them, and I guess they're going to get fired. I can't remember the exact details, but before they leave, there is a ghost account that's not what it says in the description. That's what I'm calling it. Basically, there's just $3 million sitting in an account with no name, no activity, nothing. And they decide to take it. Seems like the perfect crime. So they take this $3 million, and all of a sudden the Secret Service is after them. All these other people are after them. It turns out this ghost account wasn't so ghostly. So your thriller elements are all in place. Charlie and Oliver on the run from these different factions, trying to figure out whose money this actually is and how they're going to stay alive. Again, Brad Meltzer, great thriller. Really, really enjoyed this one. So that is it. That is everything that I read in June of 2002. Once again, did not think of a question ahead of time because that's just how I roll. So let's go with this. When you're watching these videos, how much information do you want about each book? Do you care if I have no information about a certain book, or in this case, two books? I could have dug deeper. The first thing I do when I'm making these videos, if I don't remember the book or want maybe a little more than I do remember, I go to Amazon and I look the book up and I look at the synopsis, and sometimes I'll look at some of the reviews because some reviewers write out lots and lots of detail. If I can't find what I'm looking for there, I will go to Goodreads, because even though they're still connected, right? If I'm not mistaken, even though sometimes Amazon doesn't have information, Goodreads will. So I go there, and then on rare occasions, I'll Google and go a little deeper. But I don't make money off of these things. I do it for fun, so I'm not going super deep. So the question basically, do you care if I just give you the title and the author? And at least, I mean, I can tell you that those two books were Mage the Ascension from World of Darkness and White Wolf Publishing, but I cannot tell you anything about their stories. Or do you want the information? Do you want a little more information than I typically give? Am I giving too much? Basically, your general thoughts on what you're getting with the titles in these videos. I don't have an answer because it's not that kind of question. I guess, I explained what I do, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. And if you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is ErikSmith5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. And if you're on Blue Sky, I am @ELSmith. That's all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.